The stars above the colony world of Erebus 4 shone bright and calm that night. Families gathered outside to watch the auroras move over the horizon, unaware that in a few hours their entire sky would turn to fire. Children laughed. Music played in the streets. The colony was young, barely a decade old, a proud symbol of humanity's peaceful place in the galaxy. But peace was a fragile thing. High above the planet, hidden behind the moon's shadow, a fleet waited. Not human. The Volari Dominion, a proud and ancient alien empire, had decided humanity had grown too fast, spread too far, and dared to claim too much. They called the humans contaminants of the stars, and tonight they came to erase them. At Ord 2:14 Galactic Standard Time, the first beams struck. Blue light cut through the sky like knives. Cities turned to molten glass in seconds. The screams of 10,000 souls filled the emergency channels, until they didn't. In less than 1 hour, the colony of Erebus 4 was gone. No survivors, no escape ships, no warning. The Volari called it a purification. The galaxy called it a tragedy. But humanity, they called it genocide. When the news reached Earth, the world fell silent. In the great halls of the United Terran Assembly, no one spoke for several minutes. The broadcast played again and again, cities burning, people running, the sky falling. A young technician vomited at her station. An old diplomat cried quietly. The alien newscasters spoke coldly, almost proud. The Volari Dominion confirms the neutralization of human outpost Erebus 4, citing security concerns. For the first time in 2 centuries, every human across every colony, Earth, Mars, Luna, Europa, felt the same thing: rage. Humanity had always been the strange newcomers to the galaxy. They were smaller, younger, less advanced, but adaptable, quick learners full of spirit and fire. For years, they believed in peace. They built trade routes, shared medicine, taught languages, and offered alliances. They forgave every insult, every slight. But some species saw mercy as weakness. The Volari were one of them, and now the humans had been pushed too far. The president of the United Terran Alliance sat alone in her office that night. The city outside was quiet, not from peace but from grief. On her desk lay a small hollow recording recovered from Erebus 4. A child's voice whispered through static, "Mom, it's raining fire. It's so bright. Is it the ships?" Then silence. The president closed her eyes. Tears fell, but only for a moment. She turned to her advisors and said, "Prepare the assembly. Humanity will not forget this." The next day, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. The chamber was massive. Hundreds of alien delegates sat in floating rings, each representing a different world. At the center, Earth's ambassador, Admiral Jonathan Hale, stood before them. He looked tired, old, but his voice was steady. "We ask for justice," he said. 10,000 civilians, families, children erased. We demand accountability," the council murmured. The Volari delegate rose, tall, silver-skinned, and cold-eyed. "Your colony violated expansion treaties," he said. "The strike was unfortunate but necessary. The matter is closed." The room fell quiet. Admiral Hale clenched his fists behind his back. His voice dropped to a whisper, calm but heavy. "If this is justice, then you've left us no law to obey." He turned and walked out. Over the next days, Earth sent messages, requests for investigation, peace talks, reparations. Everyone was ignored. The Council released a statement calling for mutual understanding. To the galaxy, the matter was done. To humanity, it was just beginning. Deep under the mountains of Earth, in an old military facility long thought abandoned, lights flickered on for the first time in 100 years. Rows of black consoles came alive. Old codes were reactivated. Satellites repositioned. Across the solar system, something changed. Shipyards that once built transport vessels began reforging hulls of steel and tungsten. Old war machines, relics from forgotten wars who were dragged out of museums and refitted. Factories on Mars glowed through the night. Humanity wasn't speaking. Humanity was preparing. Alien merchants reported strange activity near the asteroid belts. Cargo routes shifted. Ships vanished from scanners. And all across the communication networks, one phrase began to spread. A whisper spoken with fear and awe. Earth has gone dark. No signals. No trade, no news, only silence. A cold, terrifying silence. In the quiet void beyond Jupiter, a fleet was forming. Black hulls, red insignias, no identification beacons. They said nothing. They moved like shadows. The Terran Defense Command was reawakening, and the galaxy didn't even know it yet. Back on Earth, Admiral Hale stood at the old war memorial, the monument built for those who fell during humanity's first steps to the stars. Names covered the stone. Millions who had died for peace. He placed his hand on the cold surface and whispered softly, "You asked us to be better, to be civilized. But they took our children." He turned to his aide. His voice was colder than the vacuum itself. "Begin the order. Tell every fleet, every colony, every soldier. Earth no longer recognizes the Council. Now," he said quietly, "we stop being civilized." And for the first time in galactic history, the stars themselves seemed to dim, as if even the heavens held their breath, waiting for what was about to come. For the next 3 months, Earth said nothing. No speeches, no demands, no threats, just silence. But in the deep shadows of the solar system, humanity was moving. Factories that once built farming drones were now assembling gunmetal giants. The orbital rings around Mars glowed with the fire of constant construction. Something was coming. Something the galaxy had never seen before. The alien empires watched with curiosity at first. They thought humanity was rebuilding, mourning, or perhaps arming for defense. But what they didn't know was that every single Terran shipyard, from Luna to Neptune's orbit, had been ordered to full military production. The Terran Defense Command was back, and under a new name, Project Iron Dawn, old war codes were reactivated. Ancient AIs, the ones banned after the Great Solar Conflict, were rebooted and integrated into the fleet systems. They didn't call it revenge. They called it balance. The men and women who once worked on peaceful science missions now wore black uniforms with red insignias, a burning sun over broken wings. Everywhere, the words echoed through the ranks. Never again. Deep under the oceans of Earth, inside the Atlantic Command Nexus, Admiral Jonathan Hale stood before a holomap of the galaxy. Red dots marked every Valari-controlled world. There were many. Too many. His voice was calm as he spoke to his officers. "We will not strike blindly. We will not become monsters, but we will make them remember." Behind him, holographic windows showed rows of massive ships under construction. Dreadnoughts, carriers and cruisers of a size unseen since the ancient wars. Each one bore a single name: Erebus. The first fleet to rise from the dry docks was called the 13th Expeditionary Fleet. Led by the dreadnought Horizon's Wrath, it was commanded by Captain Mira Solon, a woman who had lost her entire family on Erebus Fur. When she received her orders, she didn't smile. She only said one thing: "About time." On Mars, thousands of soldiers stood at attention on the red plains as the first war banners were raised. Their armor was painted black, not for fear but for remembrance. These were not conquerors. They were the avengers of humanity. Training intensified. No one complained. Every man and woman knew why they were there. One young pilot whispered during the oath ceremony, "We were explorers once. Now we are the storm they made." Meanwhile, the galaxy began to notice. Trade routes near Terran space were closing. Ships that tried to enter human territory were turned away, sometimes without a word, sometimes without returning at all. The Galactic Council demanded communication, but Earth did not respond. They sent probes. The probes disappeared. They sent envoys. The envoys never came back, and slowly fear began to spread. In the Valari Dominion, leaders met in secret chambers. They laughed at first, calling humans emotional, impulsive, childish. But soon reports reached them that made their blood run cold. An entire Valari patrol fleet, 20 ships, had vanished while crossing the Perseus Corridor, a neutral trade route near human space. Scanners showed nothing, no debris, no distress signals, just silence. Whispers began to spread across the galaxy. Some said humans had unleashed forbidden weapons. Others claimed they were awakening something old, a machine god buried deep within their homeworld. The truth was simpler. Humans were planning. Every move calculated, every ship placed perfectly. They were building a weapon not of metal, but of fear. At the same time, within the Galactic Council, confusion turned to panic. The Valari ambassador demanded the Council discipline Earth. He slammed his claws on the table and shouted, "They must be contained before they infect the stars with their rage." But no one wanted to move against humanity. Not anymore, because the Council's own deep space sensors were picking up strange signals, massive energy readings from Sol system, unknown weapons testing, and worse, encrypted transmissions that reached systems light years away, activating old human colonies that had gone dark decades ago. Humanity was calling its children home. The colonies answered. From the frozen moons of Europa to the hot deserts of Proxima Centauri, old Terran outposts began to light up again. Thousands of ships, half forgotten, were restored and armed. The human race, scattered across the stars, was uniting for the first time in centuries. Inside Earth's command chamber, Admiral Hale stood with the president of the United Terran Alliance. "Do we have their attention yet?" she asked quietly. Hale nodded. "They're afraid, ma'am." "Good," she replied. "They should be." She looked out through the glass wall at the vast curve of Earth below, its cities glowing faintly under the night sky. "The galaxy thought we were weak," she said softly. "They thought mercy was our weakness, but mercy is what makes us human." Hale turned toward her, his face unreadable. "And what makes us strong," he said, "is what happens when that mercy runs out." Weeks turned into months, and the silence around Earth became deeper, heavier. Alien traders described it as an abyss in space. No signals went in or out. Even the brightest scanners returned static. It was as if the humans had vanished, but they hadn't vanished. They were waiting. In secret, hidden behind Jupiter's massive storms, a new kind of ship was being tested, one built not for defense, but for vengeance. The engineers called it the Leviathan-class battleship. It was the largest warship ever created by human hands. Mobile fortress capable of destroying an entire fleet on its own. It was quiet, efficient, deadly, and its first target was already chosen. Across the stars, rumors turned to fear. Small alien empires began cutting ties with the Volari Dominion. They didn't want to be caught in what they now called the human storm. The Galactic Council sent one final message to Earth. "We call for peace and investigation. The Volari Dominion expresses regret for the incident on Erebus 4. Let us begin rebuilding relations." The message reached Earth's relay satellites, but there was no reply. The transmission light blinked once, twice, then went dark. And far above Earth, hidden among the black hulls of waiting fleets, Admiral Hale stood before a holographic star map. He watched the red markers glow, and each one representing a target. He whispered softly to himself, "They called it justice. We will show them what justice truly means." That night, across every human world, the order came through a single encrypted message. 4 words. "Iron Dawn is coming." For 1 full year, the stars had been quiet. No signal came from Earth, no ambassador, no trade convoys, just darkness. Alien observers whispered that maybe the humans had turned against themselves, or perhaps destroyed their own world. But the truth was far worse. Humanity wasn't gone. They were watching, and they were waiting. Then, without warning, on the 367th day after the destruction of Erebus, every communication network in the galaxy froze. No one knew what happened. Messages stopped mid-transmission. Ships lost contact with their bases. Entire systems flickered with static. And then, across every holoscreen, every channel, every satellite, a signal appeared. The screen turned black. For 10 long seconds, nothing moved. Then a voice, calm, deep, unmistakably human, Aubrey spoke. "You burned our children." Silence. "You called it justice." The voice was cold, controlled, without emotion. "We call it war." The image changed. Footage appeared. Not from human cameras, but from alien archives, from Volari recordings. It showed Erebus 4 burning, the fire raining down, the screams of people running through the streets. Then the screen faded to black again. "You took our peace," the voice said. "You mistook mercy for weakness. You will not make that mistake again." Then coordinates appeared on the screen, a single set of numbers, written in Terran Standard, and below it one line, "We are coming." The message lasted less than a minute. Then it vanished. Every channel returned to normal. But across the galaxy, no one spoke. No one moved. Because the meaning was clear. Humanity had declared war. Within the hour, panic erupted. Alien news networks filled the air with speculation and fear. Some claimed the humans were bluffing. Others believed it was real, that Earth had finally broken its silence. In the Valari Dominion, fear turned to rage. The High Council gathered in the crystal towers of Vornis City, the Valari capital. They looked out over their shining metropolis, a world of peace and luxury built on the suffering of others. The Valari Chancellor hissed, "They wouldn't dare." An aide stammered, "Our deep space sensors. They've detected something near the Sol border. Movement, a fleet." The Chancellor waved him off. "They're primitives. They don't have the numbers. No race challenges the Dominion in lives." But he was wrong, terribly wrong. In orbit around Valari Prime, defense fleets began to mobilize. Thousands of ships, sleek, silver, perfectly ordered, formed a wall around their homeworld. The Valari had fought wars before. They believed they were ready, they weren't. Meanwhile, on the edge of human space in the Neptune shipyard, the final preparations were complete. Rows of colossal ships drifted silently in the darkness, their hulls painted black to vanish against the void. Their names burned in white letters: Erebus Avenger, Iron Dawn, Humanity's Wrath, Deliverance. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. Each one was crewed by people who had lost someone to the Valari attack, and at the center of it all stood the flagship, Horizon's Wrath. Inside its command bridge, Captain Mira Solon watched the fleet through the glass canopy. Her eyes were calm, her hand steady. Her first officer approached quietly. "Ma'am, the Council broadcast reached every system. They know we're coming." Mira nodded. "Good, let them prepare. Let them remember what they did." The officer hesitated. "Do you think they'll surrender?" Mira turned to him. "If they do, it won't matter. The dead deserve justice, not mercy." Back on Earth, Admiral Hale stood before the United Terran Assembly, now a silent hall of leaders, soldiers, and scientists. Behind him, the holographic map of the galaxy glowed with thousands of stars. "For years we begged for peace," Hale said quietly. "We offered trust, friendship, unity. They repaid us with fire." He looked across the room, every face hard, tired, resolute. "The Council calls us savages. Perhaps they are right. But tonight, savages will speak the only language tyrants understand." He paused. "Send the order." Moments later, across every human fleet, alarms sounded, not in panic but in purpose. Engines roared to life. Thousands of ships turned toward the coordinates transmitted in the message. The stars shifted, and the largest armada in human history began to move. In the Galactic Council, chaos reigned. The Valari delegation screamed for sanctions, demanding that every species unite to destroy the humans before they could strike. The other empires hesitated. They had seen the message too, and the cold precision of the voice had terrified them. One alien ambassador whispered to another, "Do you think they're bluffing?" The other shook his head slowly. "No one who has lost everything ever bluffs." Hours later, every deep space telescope picked up the same sight, a vast formation of dark shapes moving silently through the void. No radio chatter, no communication, just thousands of black holes reflecting no light, moving in perfect unison. The fleet was so large that it blocked out the stars behind it, and in the lead ship, Admiral Hale stood before the viewing window. The stars stretched before him, cold, beautiful, indifferent. He whispered softly, "We gave them peace. They gave us death. Now we give them silence." The news spread faster than light. Whole civilizations panicked. Merchants fled border systems. Even powerful empires began to evacuate colonies near Valari space, everywhere. Whispers followed the same pattern. "The humans are coming. They've gone dark. They're not civilized anymore." On the Valari homeworld, the Chancellor finally understood the truth. He stood at the window of his palace watching the defense fleets assemble. His aide approached. "Sir, what are your orders?" The Chancellor turned, fear in his eyes for the first time in his life. "Pray," he said softly, "because when humans promise war, they do not lie." Across human space, civilians watched the sky, and not with fear but with pride. They knew what their fleets were doing. They knew what was coming. No one protested. No one asked for mercy, because mercy was gone the day Erebus IV burned. The message that had begun it all, that cold, simple warning, would be remembered forever across the stars. You burned our children. You called it justice. We call it war. It was the sound of humanity waking up, and the sound of the galaxy realizing that they had made a terrible mistake. The stars above Valari Prime shimmered like silver dust. It was a world of power and pride in Kau, the heart of the Valari Dominion. Its capital stretched across continents, glowing with towers of crystal and light. Every citizen believed they were untouchable. No war had ever reached their skies. No enemy had ever dared, until now. In the early hours of the 8th solar cycle, long-range scanners detected something strange, faint distortions near the edge of the system. The Valari Defense Command thought it was a glitch. But the distortions grew stronger. Dozens became hundreds, then thousands. One by one, black shapes began to appear from the void, silent, massive, and cold. The commander of the Valari Defense Fleet leaned forward in disbelief. "What are those?" The officer beside him whispered, voice trembling. "Unknown signatures, sir. No identification. They're human." The commander froze. For the first time in his life, he felt something his species had forgotten. Fear. Across the entire system, alarms screamed. The Dominion fleet, one of the largest in the galaxy, mobilized in panic. Thousands of silver ships formed defensive lines around Valari Prime. Massive cruisers, plasma frigates, orbital stations that all aimed their weapons toward the incoming shadow, but no human ship fired. Not yet. They moved forward slowly like a silent storm. From the bridge of the flagship Horizon's Wrath, Captain Mira Solon watched the enemy fleet assemble. Her crew waited for orders, hearts pounding in the silence. The enemy outnumbered them 3-1. But numbers didn't matter now. Not to humanity. She turned to her communications officer. "Open channel." Static filled the air, then cleared. A dozen alien voices shouted across the link, demanding surrender, demanding reason. Mira waited. Then she spoke calm and cold. "This is Captain Mira Solon of the Terran fleet. We are not here to negotiate. We are here to remember Erebus IV." She cut the transmission and gave the order. "All ships, fire." The first volley hit like the wrath of gods. From across the void, human railguns roared. Invisible slugs traveling at a fraction of light speed. Valari ships simply disappeared. Plasma beams sliced through the blackness. Explosions bloomed across the stars like red flowers. The battle had begun. Valari commanders screamed orders. Thousands of their ships opened fire, lighting up space with blinding energy. But the human fleets didn't fight like them. They didn't form ranks or charge forward. They moved like shadows, vanishing, reappearing, striking from angles no one expected. The humans had learned. They had studied every war the galaxy had ever fought. And now they rewrote the rules. The Valari flagship Dominion's Pride turned its main cannons toward the human dreadnought. Its commander snarled, "Fire all weapons!" Beams of blue fire lanced through space, smashing against the human ship's shields. For a moment, the Horizon's Wrath trembled under the impact. Smoke filled the bridge. Sparks rained from the ceiling, but Mira Solon stood unmoved. "Return fire," she said quietly. The human dreadnought's spinal cannon charged, a massive rail weapon the length of a city. When it fired, the light was blinding. The Dominion's Pride was hit dead center. The beam tore through its shields, through its hull, through its heart. The Valari flagship broke apart, silently, beautifully into glowing fragments, across the battlefield. Human forces pushed forward. Missile clouds streaked through the void. Point defense lasers cut through debris. Valari ships exploded by the dozens. Entire squadrons vanished under coordinated human fire. For every human ship destroyed, 10 Valari ships fell. It wasn't a battle anymore. It was an execution. On the surface of Valari Prime, the people looked up as streaks of fire crossed the sky. They had never seen war before. Now it was falling from orbit. Cities panicked. Evacuation alarms wailed. But there was nowhere to go. The ground trembled as orbital bombardments began. Precise, surgical, unstoppable. Human ships didn't destroy everything. They targeted military centers, shipyards, and command towers, one after another. Each strike perfect, each strike deliberate. This wasn't chaos. It was justice. In orbit, Admiral Hale watched the burning world from the command bridge of Iron Dawn. The stars outside were red now, painted by fire and war. An officer approached. "Sir, Valari transmissions are requesting surrender." Hale didn't answer. He looked down at the planet for a long moment. "How many civilians on Erebus 4? He asked quietly. 10,000, sir." He nodded slowly. "Count them. 10,000 for 10,000. When it's done, accept their surrender." Hours passed. The once glorious world of Valari Prime burned. Its skies turned dark with smoke and ash. The sound of explosions faded into silence. The human fleet held position, surrounding the dying planet like silent judges. Then at last, the transmissions stopped. "No more, please. No more resistance." Valari Prime had fallen. The galaxy trembled. Word spread faster than light. Every empire, every colony, every race heard the same report. The Valari Dominion is gone. They had called it impossible. They had said no one could stand against them. But humanity had, and they had won. In the days that followed, smaller Valari fleets tried to fight back. Desperate, broken remnants of their once mighty empire. The Terran fleets crushed them in hours. No speeches, no warnings, only cold precision. For the first time in history, the galaxy understood what human silence truly meant. It wasn't weakness. It was the sound before the storm. As the fires on Valari Prime died, Admiral Hale stood before the fleet's transmission screen. He spoke not to the Valari, but to the galaxy. "This is Admiral Jonathan Hale of Earth. We did not start this war, but we will finish it. To every world that watched as our children burned, remember this night." He paused, eyes cold. "Mercy is over." The transmission ended. Back on Earth, millions watched the live feeds in silence. There was no cheering, no celebration, only quiet tears and bowed heads. They had avenged their dead. But the cost was heavy, and the stars would never see them the same way again. In a quiet chamber deep beneath Earth's surface, the President looked at Admiral Hale. Her voice was soft, almost broken. "We've become the monsters they feared." Hale shook his head slowly. "No, ma'am. We became the monsters they made." That night, across the galaxy, a new phrase began to spread, whispered in every corner of every world. "Don't anger the Terrans." And from that moment on, the stars remembered the day when humanity unleashed the fire, the day mercy died and the storm of Earth consumed the sky. The war was over, but the galaxy was not silent. Valari Prime burned for 7 days. When the fires faded, the stars over that world still glowed red, a wound in the night sky that would never heal. Humanity's fleets returned home. Not in triumph, but in silence. Every ship carried the same weight: vengeance, victory, and sorrow. In the cold orbit above Earth, the Terran High Command gathered aboard the great orbital citadel Elysium. It was the heart of the new alliance, a place where decisions would echo across the stars. Around the great circular table sat the faces of humanity's might: admirals, generals, presidents, and scientists. And at the center of it all stood Admiral Jonathan Hale, his uniform dark with the ash of 1,000 worlds. The council chamber was quiet until the president spoke. "Admiral Hale, the Valari Dominion has fallen. Their leaders have been captured. The question now is, what do we do with them?" Hale didn't answer immediately. He looked out through the great glass window, where Earth shone below, blue and beautiful, untouched by the war she had unleashed. "We put them on trial," he said finally, "and the galaxy will watch." 3 weeks later, the Galactic Tribunal of Terra began. It was the first of its kind, a trial not for a man, but for a species. The court was built inside a vast amphitheater on Luna, large enough to hold thousands. Cameras from every known world broadcasted the event. At the center of the hall sat the Valari High Council, 10 survivors of their empire. Their silver armor was gone, their eyes hollow. They no longer looked like rulers. They looked like ghosts. When the trial opened, the human prosecutor stood before the assembly. She was young, calm, and her voice carried through the chamber like steel. "The charges are genocide, planetary annihilation, and crimes against life itself." She pressed a button, and the hollow screens around the hall came to life. Images appeared, cities burning, people running, the screams of children from Erebus 4. Then came the silence and the stillness of the dead world. Gasps echoed across the courtroom. Even the alien diplomats from neutral worlds bowed their heads. "You called it conquest," she said. "We call it murder." The Valari High Chancellor rose slowly. His voice trembled with pride and fear. "We did what was necessary for our empire's survival. Humans were a threat. You breed too fast, you spread too far. He stopped when the prosecutor stepped forward. Her eyes burned. "You killed 10,000 children," she whispered. "Explain how that was survival." The Chancellor had no answer. The room fell silent. As the trial continued, witnesses from across the colonies testified. Survivors, soldiers, scientists. Each told their story in quiet, broken words. The Valari sat motionless. Some cried. Others stared at the floor. For the first time, they saw the true face of what they had done. Admiral Hale watched from the observation deck above. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. He only listened. He remembered the faces of his crew, the ones who had died in orbit above Valari Prime. He remembered the children of Erebus IV. He remembered the silence before the first shot, and he wondered if this was justice, or simply revenge dressed as law. Days passed. The trial grew longer, darker. The galaxy watched. Many expected humanity to execute the Valari publicly, to make an example of them. But Hale refused. "If we kill them, we become them," he told the president. "Justice isn't death. Justice is remembrance." On the 10th day, the tribunal reached its end. The Valari were found guilty, one on every charge. The sentence was not death. It was isolation. The Valari were exiled to a barren world. No weapons, no fleets, no power. They would rebuild their civilization from the ground. Under human supervision, it was a mercy no one expected. As the sentence was read, the Valari Chancellor looked up at Admiral Hale. His voice was faint, almost broken. "You could have destroyed us. Why didn't you?" Hale looked down from the gallery. "Because once we were like you, and once we forgot what mercy was." When the trial ended, the galaxy reacted with awe. Some called humanity noble. Others called them dangerous, unpredictable, too powerful, too emotional. But everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity was not what they had expected. They were not conquerors. They were judges. In the following weeks, Earth began to rebuild its alliances. Worlds that once ignored humanity now sought treaties. Old enemies sent envoys. The Terran name carried new meaning, power mixed with fear. Late one night, Admiral Hale visited the ruins of Erebus IV. The planet was still empty, silent beneath the stars. He walked among the broken buildings, the ashes of what once was. He placed a hand on the scorched ground. "We did what we had to," he whispered. But was it enough? From orbit, Captain Mira Solon watched him through the ship's viewport. She turned to her first officer. "Do you think we've changed anything?" The officer shrugged softly. "Maybe not today. But maybe tomorrow. Someone will remember why we stopped being civilized." Back on Earth, in a quiet classroom, a teacher showed her students an image. The burned world of Erebus IV beside the trial of Valari Prime. "Children," she said, "this is what happens when mercy ends." One small hand rose. "And what happens when mercy returns?" The teacher smiled sadly. "Then maybe we become human again." That night, Admiral Hale received a message in an encrypted signal from deep space. Unknown source. Single line of text. "We saw what you did. We remember the Caldari Alliance." He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. There would always be more wars, more choices, more lines to cross. But for now, humanity had shown the stars something new. Strength without cruelty. Power without madness. And though the galaxy still feared them, somewhere deep inside, a new kind of respect began to grow. In the dark beyond the stars, the ashes of old empires drifted quietly. And in that silence, the universe whispered one truth. Earth doesn't destroy. Earth remembers. Years passed. The fires of war faded into memory. But the galaxy did not forget the day Earth rose, nor the terrible strength that came with its wrath. The Valari dominion was gone. Their worlds were silent, rebuilding under human supervision, and across the stars a new order began to take shape, not of conquest, but of fear and respect. In the shining halls of the Terran Federation, Flags of many worlds now hung beside Earth's. Aliens who once looked down on humanity now stood beside them, allies under a fragile peace. Every council meeting began the same way, a moment of silence for Erebus IV. The image of the ruined colony was displayed in the chamber's center, a reminder of why peace must be protected. Admiral Jonathan Hale had grown older. The war had turned his hair gray, his voice quieter. But his eyes, sharp and cold, had not changed. He now served not as a warrior, but as a keeper of peace. From his window aboard the orbiting Citadel Elysium, he watched the Earth spin slowly below. Blue, bright, alive. It was everything they had fought for. One evening, a young officer approached him. She carried a datapad filled with reports. "Sir, you should see this," she said softly. "Something's happening in the outer rim." Hale took the datapad. On its surface, strange readings appeared, signals faint but familiar. "Who is it?" he asked. "The Caldari Alliance, sir. They're gathering fleets, but not against us. Against the Zither swarm." Hale raised an eyebrow. "They're responding to a distress call?" "Yes, sir." The message said 3 words: Erebus Protocol active. For a long time, Hale didn't speak. Then a faint smile touched his face. "They remembered," he whispered. Across the galaxy, the message spread again, the ancient Earth emergency code. But this time it wasn't a cry for help. It was a call for unity. From distant colonies to alien worlds, fleets began to move, not in fear of Earth, but with Earth. For the first time in history, the stars moved as one. In the skies above the Zither worlds, the combined armadas gathered. Terran ships stood beside alien warships that once would have fired upon them. When the swarm appeared, the galaxy fought together. Human admirals coordinated the battle. Alien captains followed their lead. And in the heart of that war, something changed. Trust was born. The battle lasted 2 days. When it ended, the swarm was gone. Millions had died, but billions were saved. The victory was not Earth's alone. It belonged to everyone. And when the news reached every world, a new phrase spread across the galactic networks. We fought like humans. It became a symbol, a meaning, a legacy. Back on Earth, celebrations filled the cities. Children learned the story of Erebus IV, Valari Prime, and the day the stars united. But to Hale, celebration felt hollow. He had seen too many wars. He stood at the memorial built in the ruins of Washington, a great wall of black glass filled with the names of the fallen. Mira Solon joined him quietly. She placed a single flower at the base. "Do you think they'll remember, sir?" she asked. Hale looked at the sky. The stars glowed faintly above, silent witnesses. "They'll remember," he said softly. "Because forgetting us would mean forgetting what mercy costs." Generations passed. Humanity changed. No longer seen as just another species, they became something greater. The keepers of balance, the guardians of peace. Where once the galaxy whispered in fear, it now spoke in respect. "The humans do not conquer," they said. "They protect." And yet legends remained. Stories told to young ones under alien skies. Once there was a world called Earth. It was small, blue, and fragile. But when the stars turned against it, it rose like fire. Some said humans were still dangerous. Others said they were the only reason the galaxy still existed. But all agreed on one truth. The universe was never the same after humanity stopped being civilized. Centuries later, deep within a museum on Mars, a small glass case stood in silence. Inside rested a scorched metal plate, the only surviving piece of the colony Erebus IV. Its surface was engraved with a single sentence, written by a child before the world burned. Mom said someday, people will come to help. A young Martian boy stood before the case staring at the words. His teacher spoke softly behind him. That message was found floating in space after the fall of Erebus IV, she said. It became the reason Earth fought back. The boy looked up, eyes wide. So, did the people come to help? The teacher smiled gently. Yes, they came, and they never stopped. Outside the museum, the night sky of Mars shimmered. Dozens of ships moved slowly across the stars. Terran, Valari, Caldari, Zither, all flying under one banner now, a symbol of blue and silver. The mark of the United Systems of Soldaria, a galaxy once divided, was now united, not by fear, not by conquest, but by the memory of one burning world. and one decision that changed everything. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon was not its technology, not its ships, not even its rage, it was its heart, the same heart that could burn in fury, and still find mercy. And so across the endless dark the stars whispered their final tribute. When Earth stopped being civilized, the galaxy learned to be.